Welcome back to Priority Traffic Podcast, where we provide actionable advice, tools, and tips to help you become the best version of yourself that you can be. I'm your host, Chris, and in this episode, I get to sit down with Captain Chris Moore of Chesapeake Virginia Fire Department. Chris comes to us today with over 30 years of experience and all the wisdom to go with it. Please join us as we dive into his story of PTSD. We discuss the stigma that surrounds it and what we can do to help prevent first responder suicide. We discuss significant experiences from Chris's past, elements of his progression into and his involvement with suicide. Please join us as we navigate his emotional and inspirational story of growth and learning. Please don't forget to check the show notes for helpful links on ways you can support and enhance your own personal growth, some available resources, and other methods to manifest your best self. So, grab a cup of coffee and join us for this illuminating and provocative conversation. Thanks for all the support. Now enjoy the show. No worries. Well, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you on. Chris Moore, Captain. You've been in the fire service for 30 plus years. You started in 93, and then, you were an EMT volunteer, correct?
Yeah, firefighter EMT volunteer in the city of Virginia Beach.
Perfect. And you grew up a son of a police officer, so that kind of gives you a really unique perspective as well.
Yeah, it is. Was really cool growing up the son of a police officer, and back then it wasn't uncommon to be taken for a ride with my dad in his patrol car and just actually go on patrol with him, and he would stop at the police precincts. But one of the things I liked the most about it was we would stop at the firehouses too. Okay. And I just developed such a huge respect for all first responders from such a young age. And I was smarter and leaned toward the fire side. And when I was old enough and wanted to start my career, I leaned towards the fire side and scored high enough on the test where I didn't have to become a police officer. And, yeah,
that must be. It sounds like that was the common thing last, a few generations back, where if you didn't score high enough, you got lumped into the police thing.
Oh, no, I just say that as a joke, just the riffing. I don't think there's no proof or evidence. That's just the jabs that we always take at each other, police and fire. We're all on the same team, so
absolutely, more so than we really know.
Yeah, exactly.
So you grew up as the son of a police officer. How did that impact your youth, would you say?
It was, like I said, it was really cool being able to do that, and just, man, I was just in such awe of my father. Each morning when he was going into work, or in the evening when he was on nights, just when he would put that uniform on, and just how proud he was of it. And my dad was a ex-Marine also that served in Vietnam. So he just had this strict regimen and wanted to look sharp and present properly to the community when he was out serving. And it was just so cool. I was like, my dad is a police officer. I was just so proud of that. And it was amazing, man. I just, my youth was, in that aspect of it, was pretty cool, man. I liked it. I really digged it. So
that's awesome.
I met a lot of cool people, and when I say that, when concerts and things came through, I got to meet musicians and celebrities and stuff there. But when I say I met cool people, what I'm referring to there, it's not the celebrities and all. It was, like I said, the firefighters and the other police officers. I thought they were just so cool. I looked up to all of those guys.
Right.
And that's what really geared me and pushed me towards being a first responder.
Nice. So before 93, obviously you had a little bit of motivation to get into first responder and EMT type stuff. Did you just decide to do that on your own, or?
Yeah, it was never anything that was like pushed on me. My family never said, "Hey, you have to do this," or "I want you to follow in my footsteps," or anything like that. They wanted me to be whatever I wanted to be, and the sky was the limit.
Sure.
And I think that was a really good way to have it, where nothing was forced or whatnot. So I knew I had that feeling. I did for some reason when I was much younger, before I became a teenager. I was also fascinated with trash trucks and being a garbage man. So I just thought it was cool because back in the day, before we had all the automated stuff, just like in the fire service, the fire guys would ride on the tailboard, and the trash trucks, those guys would ride on the back of the trash truck and jump off.
And they still get to do that.
Yeah, not here. Everything's automated here now.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I just thought that was so cool, and I wanted to do that too. And luckily, I became a firefighter instead. But I guess kind of in one way or another, first responders and trash men are kind of all tied into the stuff. Some of the stuff that we see, we deal with a lot of crap, if you will, or whatnot. So I think I definitely made the right choice.
Yes. I mean, there's something to be said about riding on the back of equipment. I think there's something intrinsically exciting about that for kids. Riding on the back of tractors, riding on the back of trucks, just riding outside of the cab is super exhilarating, I think, for young children and young adults, or full-size adults who are still children.
Yeah.
So coming into this, you got through your Virginia Beach EMT stuff. In about 2000, you made the switch to full-time?
Yeah, started out, like you said, in 93 in Virginia Beach as a volunteer firefighter.
Yeah.
And I did all of that. Back then, it seemed so much harder to become a career firefighter. Right. So I was doing everything possible to do that, and that's why I started volunteering, get back to the community, get my experience and all my certifications. Yeah. And it took me 7 years of volunteering to finally get picked up, and I got picked up by the neighboring city of Chesapeake. Gotcha. And started working there as a career firefighter and paramedic, and that's where I'm currently at now, active, and serve as a captain in charge of engine company.
Perfect. What would you say the culture was in 93, right in that area when you first got in, like regarding fitness, mental well-being, all the stuff that we'll probably talk about here shortly, but what would you say that culture was like when you first got into it compared to right now?
Much different, like you and I know, and hopefully a lot of people out there. I know a lot of the older firefighters and first responders that listen to your podcast will say this, but for the newer guys, it's we've come so far. We still have a long ways to go, but health and fitness was always a thing. We do a lot more with it now. But we always kept our bodies in shape. We did a lot more running and everything back then, it seemed like.
Right.
But as far as mental health and wellness, we didn't really have a whole lot of behavioral health. I don't even think I ever really heard that term until the 2000s is when I really started hearing about it. And now that's the hot topic of the day.
Yeah.
But the whole thing I remember from even riding with my father as a child and growing up, like I said, he was a ex-Marine, and then in the police department, I just remember growing up and getting the whole suck it up buttercup.
Right.
And it's like, you don't show emotions, you do what needs to be done, you do what you're told, and you like it. And I not saying that to speak bad about my father, but that was the generational influence at the time, with how they were influenced, and they don't know what they didn't know. That's what they were instilled in them. So that carried over into not just their family lives, but into their work lives also. how my father had it. And when I came into the fire service in '93, that's was the same mentality that we had. And we're still, at times, I know from talking to a lot of other first responders out there, we're still dealing with that across the country at numerous, I don't want to say fire departments, I want to say first responder agencies.
Right.
And it's eye-opening and disheartening. So I really appreciate your platform and what you do with health and wellness. And we really need to get this word out there about it to make that, I don't want to say cultural change, because we don't want to change our culture. We just need to modify it. So
yeah, we should update it. Yeah,
just update our culture there. But as we know, and I think from talking to a lot of police officers and even our dispatchers, we always forget about our dispatchers.
Yeah.
But one thing that, or two things that we all hate is we cannot stand change. We hate change in the fire service and first responder community. But on the other hand, the second thing that we always hate is for things to stay the same.
Right. We hate the way things are.
Yeah. So we're damn if we do, damn if we don't. But there is a big shift that's going on right now. And we just need to get the buy-in for our physical health, but also our mental health right now.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the excuse me, the telecommunicators that are in our line of our work, our dispatch. I've got a little bit of research here. So some studies have found that 17 to 24% of public safety telecommunicators have symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's surprising to me, only for the fact that it's a stat. The fact that it's happening is actually not surprising. Like, it makes sense that it's happening. I think we just completely think that because they're on a phone in a booth outside of, the chaos, that they're not experiencing anything.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at that number. I would be willing to bet it's probably at least 50%.
Yeah, okay.
And people don't look at it properly.
Right.
Is my feelings and thoughts on it is they think, like you had just said, that they're not seeing everything that our law enforcement, our firefighters and EMTs and everybody see. They're just on the phone and dealing with it in a secure environment.
Right.
But to me, I mean, they are the true first responders.
Yeah, initial contact.
So, yeah, when that person on the other end of that phone is going through their time of crisis and just the worst time in their life, if it's a loved one having a medical emergency or a bad fire, motor vehicle accident, active shooter, whatever horrific condition you can imagine, and that dispatcher is taking that call and dealing with that, calming the person down, getting the pertinent information to give to us. Mm-hmm. And then once it's dispatched and we arrive on scene, they get off the phone. Right. So they know the beginning of the book, but they don't know the middle or the end. And that's what we all know. That's when your mind starts playing tricks on you, just wondering and thinking what happened. Well, we all have the kitchen table. We know in the fire service, that's where we solve the world's problems. So when we get back from the call, we get to go to the kitchen table or the day room or wherever your place is in your firehouse. And in one way, shape, or form, we might not always realize it, but that's something for us where we can decompress. Absolutely. Dispatchers don't have that, because as soon as they hang up that phone, at most municipalities, or a lot of them across the country, they're answering the very next call.
Right.
And there is no time for that. So God bless our dispatchers, and I am a big supporter and advocate for them as well, and they should get the same treatment and state laws and regulations that govern first responders should go out to dispatchers as well. So on just a brief sidebar,
yeah,
I just lost a friend that was a dispatcher.
Oh no.
Yeah, she ended up losing her battle. She had a lot of demons, like a lot of us do within public safety, and unfortunately, she succumbed to the battle. But we can do so much better for all of us,
and we should.
We really should. So many people talk the talk about behavioral health for our first responders, because like cancer was, probably still is today, but when it really got prevalent in the fire department world 10 plus years ago, that's always been the hot topic, as it should be and should remain.
Sure.
But just recently, within the past few years, is when we started talking about mental health, and that's the new hot topic. Well, I think a lot of people within organizations talk about it because it's the hot topic, not because they think or know it's the right thing. They just think talking about it makes them sound like, hey, I'm up with the times and I'm doing this and doing that. Well, talking about it and doing two different things. For sure. You got to be able to walk the walk. And like Mike Tyson said, everybody thinks they got the answer to the question until they get punched in the mouth.
Right.
Don't wait for a member or members of your organization to get punched in the mouth. So let's be proactive. So often in our careers, we're reactive because the stuff's already happened when we find out about it.
Right.
So let's pre-plan, like we try for a lot of our buildings and everything like that. Let's pre-plan for our members, our firefighters, our police officers, dispatchers, and so on. So
absolutely, I could not agree more. And my heartfelt condolences go out to you and that friend of yours, her family. That's something that that is something that I want to talk about today. But that pain doesn't end when they go. Right, it gets passed on, and again, I'm sorry that you're experiencing that, and she experienced what she had to, and so I do apologize, and that is,
no need to apologize. Thank you though for your heartfelt condolences and everything.
We'll have to keep working through that, and one person is too many.
Yeah, exactly. So. One is too many, and you just had a great thing right there, that suicide completion, and even suicide attempts. We got to understand that suicide does not stop the pain, just like what you said there. That was spot on. All it does is it passes it on to your family, your friends, your department members, everything else. But when you are in such a dark place, as many of us are, and many are still in this dark place and suffering in silence, people don't realize it, and you don't realize that it passes it on because your mind just isn't right when you're in that dark place. And it's a deadly place when some people are suffering in silence and get down to the lowest of lows.
For sure. So. Well, real quick, I want to let anybody know if you or someone needs help or is in a position where they just don't know what to do, we have a couple phone numbers for you today. The first one's going to be call or text 988 or chat at 988lifeline.org. That's 988. You can call or text. And I know, Chris, you have a special number you like to give out too. If you want to share that number with our audience right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I started back in 2020 when I started doing public speaking to departments and then at conferences and symposiums, and then I put it on all my social media, is my personal cell phone number. I was originally told that I was crazy when I first started doing that I'm just going to get telemarketers calling me and somebody calling about my car's warranty is expiring or whatever. But I figured if I could reach just one person to help them, that it's worth it if I get 5,000 telemarketing calls. So
right.
I put my personal cell phone number out there for any of you guys that need anything. If you're struggling, you just want to talk to somebody, you have a question about resources or whatever it may be. I do give the disclaimer, I am not a clinician. I'm not a therapist.
Right.
Sure as hell, I'm not a doctor. But what I am is I'm a fire captain, I'm a colleague, I'm a friend, and I have lived experiences through my 30 plus years, and I also have post-traumatic stress. And what many of you out there, if you aren't familiar with me, you'll find out today, I have a suicide attempt as well. So I'm totally open, honest, and candid. Nothing is off limits, as you'll probably find out today. But anyhow, my phone number, personal cell phone number, you can call or text me, 757-536-3373, and I will always listen. Your phone doesn't weigh 5,000 pounds.
Exactly.
Pick it up. I would love to hear from you. And I am proud to say that since I started that, the inception of putting my phone number out there, we are just shy of 1,600 people have used my number. Nice. And I keep in touch with everybody. When people reach out to me and we have a conversation, I ask them in turn, hey, can I keep in touch with you? And I haven't had anybody tell me no, so I randomly, throughout the week, do buddy checks. I'll just send a random text at a random moment and just say, hey, you matter. How you doing today? I just want you to know you matter, and I'm thinking about you. And it's amazing. So one more time, 757-536-3373.
There you go, guys. If you need anything, give Chris a call. I've been speaking with him for the past couple weeks. I can tell you he's definitely going to listen to you. Again, 757-536-3373. Don't hesitate if you need anything. Chris, we really appreciate you doing that. I think that makes a big difference.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Awesome. So back into the PTSD and mental health stuff, right? Let's talk about how you got into this space, to be an advocate, to be someone who believes in the power of supporting this cause, because that doesn't just happen without something happening.
Yeah, so a lot of departments out there, from what I'm finding out now, they either some of them don't have anything, but some will have CISM models that they utilize after traumatic events or tough calls for their people. And just recently, departments have started doing peer support, which is a branch of CISM. And I think those are all good things. Hopefully your department has something. Well,
we are working on ours right now.
Okay. I use the analogy, and I've heard others do this as well, that our heads as first responders are like a bucket. I know this is a pretty big bucket right here, but every time we're exposed to a traumatic event, it goes into our bucket. And let me kind of just rewind for 1 second. I just want to put a little number out there before I go any further with it. That the average person in the country is exposed from, on average, about 3 to 5. So we can go on the high number, 5 traumatic events in a lifetime. We can see that in one shift.
Right.
So if you factor that in to a 20, 30, and we even have guys doing 40 plus years now.
Yep.
That's a lot of stuff that we are exposed to. So back to the bucket, every time you see something that goes into that bucket, well, if we don't have some kind of a healthy, and I emphasize healthy, coping mechanism to release and process what we've just experienced and dealt with, then it's going to keep building up as we get more and more and more trauma. And eventually, it's going to overflow. And when it overflows, it's not pretty, because usually that's when you go into that darkness. Well, my bucket overflowed. It was January of 2017. And just leading up to that, I never had a healthy way to cope with and process all of the traumatic events that I had seen over the years. So you figure that was 2017. I started in 93. So that's 24 years of unhealthy coping mechanisms. And just a lot of it was just pushing everything deep down inside and using our dark sense of humor at the firehouse with the guys. And then alcohol.
Right.
Well,
27 years of accumulated micro traumas and maybe some major traumas along the way. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
okay.
It doesn't have to be. I always thought that post-traumatic stress, being from where I live here, we have the largest military naval installation in the world is right here in Norfolk, Virginia. Yeah. And I always thought that post-traumatic stress was either just for our military. God bless all of them. Very, very patriotic and love. Thank you all our veterans out there in active duty for the service and defending our freedoms. But for all the horrific things that they're exposed to in Iraq, Afghanistan, anywhere they serve our country. And then for first responders, I only thought post-traumatic stress was if you were involved in a line of duty death, a near miss, an active shooter situation, something like that. I didn't know, like you just said, that it could be all the micro events and then some other major traumatic events all blended together. Sure. So I had my bucket overflow January of 2017. It was a pediatric trauma.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we weren't successful. And that was the one that overflowed. And everything that was in my bucket over those 24 years up to that point started just pouring out. And we did, immediately after that call, we were using a CISM-based debriefing system. And I don't care what you have. I just want you to have something in your departments. CISM, this is just for me. It did not work for me. I'm not a fan of it because it didn't work properly for me. So, but it is good to have. It's better than nothing. So the way we ran ours back then was we just got everybody that was involved with the call in a room, and you talk about it, and then the person leading it is just, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Well, I don't know where it started, but we still have the thought process in our culture that we have a big S on our chest. That we have that Superman right there, and that if we say that call bothered me, that it makes us look weak. It's just in our head. We don't, but we have that thought process in our head. So at that time, everybody in the room, you could see it on our faces that we were hurting. We were really struggling. But when they went around to each and every person, we all said that we were good, and we do what we always do is after that, the tones go off, you jump on the rig, and you run the next call. So that's what happened. Well, later that evening, when I went to lay my head down in my bunk, my mind just started playing tricks on me. And all of these calls, I had never thought twice about. I ran them, and they were done. They were over with years and years earlier.
We thought.
Yes. Started having vivid, intrusive thoughts about these other traumas and experiences that I've had. And that went on throughout that night at the firehouse. I went home the next day, and the thoughts were still sticking with me. I was having problems sleeping, and this just carried on and on for quite a while. And like I said, I didn't think it was possible for post-traumatic stress. I literally thought that I was going crazy. And it was scary. For the older audience out there that may remember, or the people that just like classic scary movies, the old movie Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, God, the scariest.
I started getting to the point where I was afraid. When I could fall asleep, I was afraid to fall asleep at times. And because of the nightmares I was having, I would wake up in a sweat and just like thrashing and screaming. And it was just so horrible.
Wow.
Well, that went on for a little over 4 months.
Okay.
And then a member of our department that's known me our whole career saw me one day and noticed that I wasn't my normal self. So
how
he
so?
I was everything was really weighing on me to that point. So I started disassociating from people.
Okay.
And just wasn't it. I've always been a very happy-go-lucky guy, very social with everybody I ever encounter, but especially our brothers and sisters at the firehouse, and
right.
very, very active within my department. And I started pulling back a little bit, and especially with the lack of sleep and everything too. I was more moody and cranky. My family would describe it when I was coming home each day. They didn't know what husband or father was coming home, and they were walking on eggshells,
of course,
all the time because, like I said, I was just struggling so much.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I failed to mention leading up to this point is I did turn to alcohol as well.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about that, like your coping mechanism. So I don't want to interrupt, but I did want to take a step back and ask you what your coping mechanisms were up until that, and likely you didn't even call them coping mechanisms. We just called them what we did, right?
Yeah, and the coping mechanisms, I didn't call it that, but looking back and being more educated now,
right.
That's exactly what they are, coping mechanisms, mm-hmm. or rackets. We create these rackets for ourselves, and when I say rackets, it's something that we justify. We do
sure.
to make us feel better, but we make a justification for why we're doing it. So it's nothing more than a racket. Well, a lot of people in our community, first responder community, when we have these hurts and hang-ups and post-traumatic mm-hmm. stress and depression, anxiety, whatever it may be, we reach out for our number one thing that we always celebrate in the fire service. I know a lot of people are probably going to be sending me hate mail or whatever because I'm not glorifying it right now, but is alcohol.
Okay.
And I mean, no matter where you go when we're off duty, or we have a golf tournament or softball tournament, whatever it may be, we always have our alcohol there. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing. We just got to
right.
do it for the right reasons. And I thought at that moment I was doing it for the right reasons, but I turned to alcohol.
Okay.
And
it was solving that problem momentarily in the short term.
In my mind, it was solving the problem, but it wasn't. It was making problems worse.
Right.
But yeah, so I was doing alcohol, and then I had two other vices as well that ended up popping up. The second one was, and I'm not proud of any of my vices. I'm proud that I've overcome them. But all of this is really drastically changed my life. So the second mm-hmm. one was infidelity.
Okay.
And I was trying to get through all of my vices, going to that internal drugstore to get like a quick dopamine rush, and feel good get a fix and feel good, and it doesn't last long. It's just a quick fix. And my third thing was getting myself in debt and spending money I didn't have. Just running up credit cards and doing this and that.
Sure.
Like I said, I had a good reputation, very, very popular, but I felt like I still had to do more. So we'd get off shift. I would take my guys out to Top Golf or wherever. And mm-hmm. I mean, they thought when we got there that, hey, everybody's paying their own way. But when the check came, I was like, I'll take that and pay it. And I felt good for just a little while. Oh, thanks, Captain. We appreciate that. And then when that damn bill came and I saw that, I was like, shit. So then I would have to make myself feel good again and do something else. So it was just a cycle that just kept spinning in a circle, going nowhere good.
Yeah. There's an oscillation there between that high and that low, and they proceed and chase each other continuously. And I notice when I get into a oscillation cycle like that, the hardest part for me is sleeping. Like I get into this space and while I'm in bed, but everything starts to come in when the lights go off and there's quiet.
Well, that's when, for me, the alcohol would come into play.
Okay, so it would help you sleep. I mean, it would sedate you more so than sleep.
Yeah, because I was still afraid to sleep, but I knew I needed it to function, to get a little bit. So, but so that carried on until April.
Okay.
And that member noticed something wasn't right.
Right.
So I learned from that what I say that member did was he had his fingers on the pulse of his brothers and sisters in our department. And I think that is so important that we know who we're working with. Mm-hmm. And not just know that, this is so-and-so and he's cut loose to drive this piece and do these skills or whatever. I think know our members, our department family members, as who they are as a person.
Right.
And that's what this person had always done. And because of that, they noticed something wasn't right, and they took me out to lunch the next day when I was off. Okay. And this was a upper level person of our department, and very high ranking. And when we went to lunch, it wasn't firefighter to officer. It was human being to human being, person to person. It was a personal, open, candid conversation. They wanted to know what was wrong, so I was able to open up and share everything that was going on within me. And this person had, like I said, vested in me, like we should with everybody else in our departments, and knew my family. And we're a department of just about 500 members.
Okay, so good size.
Yeah, to have that connection with that many people. And this person, and you know what? I'm not going to say this person. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. This was our fire chief.
Okay.
The chief of the department.
The big dog.
Yeah, the big dog.
Nice.
And the big dog really saved me in that moment and helped get me where I am today. So all he did at that moment was listen. Mm-hmm. And once I was finally done getting just everything out, he asked about my family. He's like, do you talk to your family? Do you share your feelings, your emotions, what you've experienced and seen at work with your family? And my answer was no.
Right.
I never did. I would be gone, like most of us, 24 hours at a time, and you would think that a lot of stuff has happened over 24 hours. You would be excited to come home and, hey, babe, we did this, we did that, and I had a tough call today. I'm sorry. I'll discuss it with you later. If I'm cranky today for just a little while, let me just decompress. But I would never do any of that. I thought I was protecting my family by keeping it away, because going back to my father and the earlier generation when I came in, that's just what you were taught to do. You don't bring work home. You don't discuss stuff. And
that's funny, because that is something that is really pushed on us, is that not bringing work home. But when it's in you, you have no choice. And then at that point, you're just pretending. Yeah.
So I would come home. My wife would always ask me how work was.
Right.
And I would just, my two answers, it was either it was okay or it was the norm, whatever. Then she would go off to work and I would be home. My son would go to school. And then I would start medicating with alcohol. But he's like, you don't need to do that. He goes, you need to start talking to your family. He goes, I know you have a really good built-in support system there. Open up.
Yeah.
And then his second advice was to explore my faith. He's like, I don't know if you're a person of faith. Mm-hmm. And I know this is a very controversial subject. Not everybody is, but for those that are, or those that are on the fence with it, it was a great thing when he said that. So I went home that night after our lunch. My wife got home, and we really had a heart-to-heart. I told her everything that I'd been suffering with and going through, and she knew something was going on. Like I said, they were walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
And we just started talking since then. I would come home from work each day. If I had bad calls, I would let her know that, hey, I had a couple bad calls. I promise I'll talk to you about it later. Right. And we would talk about it, obviously not sharing any pertinent information. But it really helped me and got me through. I was very naive, though, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm fixed. I'm feeling good now.
Right.
But we know that's not the case. Just talking to your family when you already have so much going on, and then even exploring your faith, that's not enough to fix you. So I really felt, was telling myself, I was feeling better, but I was telling myself that I was fixed and doing good, and that lasted for a little over a year.
Okay. And
you got to remember, I had something now to help me empty stuff coming into my bucket, but I still didn't have the proper tools and everything that I'm finding out that we really need.
Absolutely.
Well, my bucket overflowed again in 2018, late 2018, and at this time I spiraled back down into that dark place, and fortunately my wife remembered me talking about one of my mentors in the fire department. Had shared with me that he knew of a therapist that works with first responders. So she started urging me to get that information from him. Well, I blew it off, and finally got a business card from my mentor for that therapist. Well, getting it and making the phone call were two different things. I still, right. once I got it, because I appeased my wife by getting the number. Well, then she started nagging me about making the phone call. So probably took a good month or month and a half. And one day I was still just spiraling down, and just something just came over me, and that card was right there. So I made that phone call.
Nice.
And
make that phone call.
Yeah, you know what the two hardest words to say are?
Help me.
No, I do, man. Come on, I do. Gosh, yeah.
I just guessed.
No, you're absolutely right. Help me is the up until that point, the two hardest words I ever said was I do. So
yeah.
But no, all seriousness, it was help me. So when that therapist answered the phone, it seemed like eternity, but in reality it was probably about 20 seconds that he probably only heard heavy breathing on the other end of the phone, because I couldn't get those two words out. I could not get any words out. And then it was about 20 seconds I finally got the words out, help me.
Wow.
So looking back on it, I just wonder what was going through his head when he hears somebody breathing, and I finally say, help me. But eventually he got me to a point during that phone call where I could share some stuff with him. And He's like, I can help you. So he set up an appointment. And then the second hardest thing I ever did was actually showing up to that appointment.
That's terrifying, isn't it?
It is. And for those of us that don't know what therapy truly is, again, our minds, our imagination can play tricks on us. I'm the older generation, and I always just, from watching like old television shows and movies and documentaries, stuff like that, I just thought that therapy, I was going to walk in there And this guy is going to be sitting in this big leather wing chair, smoking a pipe, and there's going to be a roaring fireplace, and I'm laying on a couch, and I'm just like in a fetal position on the couch, sharing my whole life story and crying like a baby. But it's not the case at all.
Yeah.
And it was just two guys having a conversation like you and I are right now.
Right.
And then he has tools that not only can he offer me, but he can also teach me how to use those tools and to have the know-how of when to use those tools. And for an analogy for our firefighters listening, if somebody comes into the firehouse with no background and we just give them a set of irons,
right,
they're not going to know what to do with them. So if somebody just gives me a tool for my mental health but doesn't tell me how to use it or anything like that, it's not doing me any good. But if you teach somebody how to use those irons to force a door or whatever, then we get a lot of work done. We're very successful when we do that. So it's the same thing with mental health. This guy gave me the tools and the ability to use them and the know-how of when to use them. And I really got a lot out of that, and it really fixed me. And I was seeing him on a regular basis for almost a year.
Wow.
And then he had a tragedy within his practice. One of his actually not one of, he only had one other partner, but his partner passed away. Okay. And the practice shut down. And it wasn't like it shut down and said, hey, all my patients, here's a list of other clinicians or therapists that will see you. It was nothing. Wow. So now I'm back to square one. I was smart enough to realize that, hey, I need to continue with therapy. So I started doing Google searches, and at that moment, I really truly realized how hard it is to get help. Not to ask for it, but to, when you know you need it, to get it. I found therapists that dealt with post-traumatic stress, but they weren't taking new patients, or they weren't taking my insurance. It was just so hard. And then you don't want to just find any therapist. Even when you find one and you go to them, I always use the analogy that therapists are like a pair of shoes. They are not one size fits all. You need to be comfortable so you could be 100% open, honest, and vulnerable to that therapist. And if you're not going to be able to meet that criteria within yourself, then they can't help you. So you need to be able to be open with them. And it took some time, but eventually I found a therapist and got in with this new therapist. And I told her that during my first appointment. Yeah. And I was like, hey, no offense, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but I look at you guys as a pair of shoes, and you're not one size fits all. If I'm not comfortable with you, I'm not going to come back. And this lady, just as cool and stern as can be, said, you know what? She goes, I wouldn't expect anything different. And I look at patients the same way. If I don't think that I can help you and we're the right fit, I will get you to the help that you need. And I just thought that was amazing. And we just struck it off, hit a good rapport, and been going there, seeing her for quite some time. She actually introduced me also to another therapy process that my first therapist didn't have. Okay. It was EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Nice. Which is a amazing thing for me. And just like anything else, it might not work for everybody, but it is highly successful for a lot of people that get it. Yeah. And for those of you out there who don't know what it is, I kind of I dumb it down in my dumb firefighter lingo or terminology, because I hate it when we go to conferences or symposiums or wherever it may be, and there's a doctor, a clinician, or a therapist like talking way over my head, stuff that we just don't get.
Jargon gets you every time.
Yeah. So what it is, when we see this traumatic event, it gets filed into our filing cabinet. We'll just say that's the front of our brain. Okay. So when you do this EMDR, it reprocesses it, and in essence, it refiles it to the back of the filing cabinet of our brain. It doesn't brainwash you or remove your thoughts or memory or anything like that. It just makes it where it's not always on the front of our mind, and puts it in the back of the filing cabinet. And it truly works wonders. I still do it to this day.
Could you explain the process a little bit for the people who have zero idea of what that consists of?
So, trying to think how to make it where it's easier to explain.
Okay.
The way we do it, there is like a flash processing that you could do also.
Okay.
But the one that we're doing is you're holding two stimulants, one in each hand.
Yep.
There are electronic stimulants, and it's like a beat going back and forth that kind of has a certain rhythm to it. You have your eyes closed. You envision the trauma, and then they'll get you to envision different things about it. But it's 4 different intervals that you're having your minds closed and your eyes closed, and you're processing this. They'll stop. They'll reevaluate you, see how you feel, and then you'll move on and do it again to different aspects of it. And it's nothing that pokes or prods you or anything, but it can be like very just draining to us because you're reprocessing it.
Gotcha.
But it's really been successful for me.
Excellent. Well, what we'll do is we'll put some helpful resources in the show notes for this show, and make sure everybody gets a little bit more information and maybe a resource to take them where they think they might need to go. So yeah. Hopefully that helps. And what do you think we can do to start breaking down? Like, your story has been full of stigma points, not sticking points, but stigma points, where you were afraid to do something for what it was perceived as by our community. What can we do to start battling against that?
Probably first and foremost, the easiest thing that we can do, I say easy, but all of this is going to be difficult. We have a long road to go on all of this.
Completely agreed.
But we need to normalize it. And just like I said, sitting around the kitchen table, we solve the world and the department's problems. Mm-hmm. We need to, how we can talk so freely about all that, we need to talk freely about our mental health and how our feelings. And I'm not saying, I know we always have the joke that, we're going to sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya. And that's just not the case, but it should be just like you and I right now, just having a general, normal conversation. There's nothing adverse about what we're doing right now, right, or weird about it. And we need to let people know that it is okay. And nobody is too far gone within any of our organizations. We can reach the oldest, saltiest, crustiest firefighter or first responder out there, and
absolutely
we can make a difference to them. We also need to think about the new generation that's coming in, and one thing that we're doing, and I know a lot of departments across the country, is we are giving them mental health training in their fire academy. Good. And that's something in the state of Virginia here that our governor passed probably 7 years ago or so, that all first responders coming into the job get it's just a basic level, but they have to get some kind of mental health training. I think that's amazing. It's a great start. However, I think that a lot of people are just checking the box.
Yes, a lot of it is that.
Yeah, we did this to meet the criteria of the state.
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing it. But we in Chesapeake, where I'm a fire captain at, we actually have our peer support and behavioral health team. We have since switched from SISM to peer support model. And we get a block of time, so many hours on one of the days, and we go to the fire academy and we talk to all of our recruits.
Excellent.
And let them know what to look for. We also give them our contact information where they could privately reach out to us or whatever. And it seems to be working very well. Can we improve on it? Absolutely we can. The sky is the limit when it comes to a lot of this stuff. One thing that I like to I try and push, I haven't got it established yet, but instead of just having the recruits there, I know a lot of departments, ours does it, and I know a lot of people I've spoken with across the country do something similar as far as like a family day, where when it's towards the end of the academy, the recruits come in with their family, and the recruits will put on like a little display of what they've learned throughout the academy. So it's really good environment, and I just think we could better it if we get a little bit of the time then where we could do our peer support and behavioral health talk to not just the recruits but to their family. Because a lot of people don't realize how it affects the first responder. It affects the family dynamic as well. Like I said earlier, my wife and son were walking on eggshells each time, wondering what husband or dad was coming home. I found out after the fact my wife and I are since divorced, and I attribute that to my post-traumatic stress and everything, and not having the healthy coping mechanisms is what led to it. But the family dynamic was greatly impacted, and we just don't realize that. So by putting on a course like I'm trying to implement within our department, I think it lets the family know how to take care of themselves also, but also what to look for in their first responder loved one. Sure. And it doesn't have to be a spouse that comes to it. It could be a mom and dad, brother, sister, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever. Just bring somebody that you are close to these and learn as well, because they live, once we get out in the field and start doing this stuff, they live vicariously through a lot of the stuff that we see if we're coming home and sharing things too. And then with social media and just the news on TV, they see that. They're smart. They put two and two together. They're like, oh, Dad must have been at this bad fire here where some people perished. And also they see that, they pick up on it, the way that we act and present towards them negatively sometimes. It's a great idea for them to have resources as well for to go and get therapy too.
Sure. So when we talk about can I go back to your analogy with the bucket?
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
So we talk about the bucket being this place that we accumulate, and we accumulate these traumas or stressors, and they can be all sorts of sizes, correct?
Yeah.
Right, and you said yours was a large one, like the one that overflowed the first time, right? Does it have to be, like we could have accumulated plenty of stressors, and it doesn't have to be necessarily that giant, big, obvious pediatric death that pushes us over, does it?
No, absolutely not. And like I said, there's not downplaying a pediatric death or anything, but there's so much more that's worse than that. Like I said, I always thought it had to be a line of duty death or a near miss that we were involved in, or the active shooter situation. But no, it's all the small ones also, every little thing. And what might affect me might not affect you, or vice versa.
Sure.
So there's really not a whole lot of rhyme or reason as to who gets affected by what and to what extent. But it doesn't just have to be big, major events like that.
Okay.
And it could be things also that I'm sure we're going to bring up in just a little bit. You and I have talked about it on a sidebar before. Mm-hmm. Is we can have the childhood experiences, and then we're out on a call and we see something happen that we can relate to from our past, mm-hmm. that brings things back. So it's a big variance of things, but no, it definitely does not have to be one. It can be one major event, sure. But yeah, it doesn't just have to be one big event. It could be lots of smaller events.
Perfect. So moving into that concept, the coping mechanisms we talked about, these are habits that we do that serve a purpose, either alcohol, substance use, spending, pornography. All of these things are coping mechanisms. They don't tend to serve us very well. On the other hand, we have fitness, meditation, breathing, talking, and I kind of like the idea that those coping mechanisms, the let's say the negative ones or not so serving ones, alcohol, all those things, they put little holes in the bucket, and they don't let it drain very fast. But the good ones, talking, processing, therapy, fitness, those other what we would call positive coping mechanisms, they put larger holes in that bucket, allowing that to offload for us. Would that make sense?
Absolutely. So, and that's what we got to do is let people know what these healthy coping mechanisms are.
Perfect.
And obviously, there are going to be different ones for different people. Just find out what is the right fit for you and to use it.
What has been a coping mechanism that has worked for you? Obviously, therapy is doing a number, so we'll check that off the box. But what is something else that has really been a profound positive impact for your experience?
Yeah, so how you said we can check the therapy off. Two others that I had mentioned, we can check those off also. Being 100% open, honest, and candid with your family, friends, loved ones, your confidants, if you will, is amazing, just to get stuff off your chest that you've seen, that you're feeling. And the third one that we could check off is, for me, faith is a big thing that I have just since all of this began have recently come back to, and mm-hmm. I find a lot of strength in my faith, regardless of, and I'm not going to turn this into a sermon or anything, but I just think it's important that one way or another we believe that we are here from a higher power.
Yes.
Whether your higher power is Jesus Christ or Buddha or whoever it may be, just knowing that there's a higher power and there's something that's greater than all of us really helps me understand and deal with and cope with things.
Absolutely.
But so other than those three, some things that have really worked for me is realizing first that self-care is not selfish. And I've always been one of those persons, like many of us in our career path, that could not say no. And I would want to do for others, and because that's what we do for the citizens we serve. We're always providing stuff for them. And then brother or sister, first responder, has a issue at their house. The storm came through and messed up their roof, and we're always right there and doing that. And so it's just my life had always, and I'm not complaining about all that, but I had always been nonstop. And then especially you throw in the family dynamic with a child that played sports all the way through high school. And I've gotten to the point now I realize I have to be able to say no, and it doesn't make me selfish when I do that. So once I do that and I make time for myself, I like to get in touch with my inner being, and I know this isn't tree hugger or hippie-ish, but whatever it may be. Mine, I was taught about meditation about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And the meditation that I do, I believe it can be Googled. It's called Warrior Meditation.
Yep.
And I learned that at a facility I went to called Save a Warrior. And it's a 20-minute meditation that I do at least once a day. And when I was first taught that, a year and a half ago, they told us there is no such thing as a bad meditation.
Right.
And just stick with it, and eventually it'll kick in. Well, us as first responders are always on the ready and hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
And it was so hard for me to get into it. But almost about 2 weeks into it, it finally just sunk in. And I have not missed a day of getting at least one 20-minute meditation in the past year and a half now.
That's amazing.
And it really is. And I never knew how good it could be for just clearing the mind. And it just relaxes. Once you clear the mind and free yourself of whatever your worries are and is bothering you, you just feel it throughout your whole body as you're meditating. My therapist used to always tell me before I learned about meditation, my shoulder, I'm always like sitting up tight and just so tense and everything. But if I feel myself doing that, I was like, let me see if I can set aside 20 minutes. Who doesn't have 20 minutes a day?
Right.
And don't say that you don't. We have 20 minutes. Look at your screen time on your cell phones.
Yeah.
And see, it's like, oh, shoot, I was on TikTok for an hour today, and that's probably on the low end for some of these people.
Sure.
But you have time for all of that. Make time for yourself.
Absolutely.
To do these little things. And then also, I live right here on the coast. I could be at the oceanfront here, set up and sitting on the beach within about 15 to 20 minutes max. Actually, out my door and sitting on the beach.
Nice.
And I really have learned. I've always been a very big beach person. Some people like the mountains, the forest, whatever. But just find your place that you could be connected with nature. And I've always been a very big beach person, but I didn't realize how important it was to my mental health until last year, actually. And I make it a point. I'm an early riser. I'll get up and get there before sunrise.
Nice. What time do you get up?
I usually get up at probably about 4:30 in the morning.
Okay. Nice.
So get up, and it's just... I like to I know everybody has their own routines in the mornings. For me, what really helps me, and especially with my mental health, is I can't be one of these guys if I have to be at work at 0700 and I got a 30-minute ride to the firehouse. I can't wake up at 6. Hurry up and jump in the shower, throw some clothes on, and be on the road and be there like right at 7. I have to ease into my day. And to me, that helps me be more organized, structured, and that's what makes me feel better. I just feel more at ease, more relaxed, and I get to the firehouse. Like I said, we start at 0700, but I'm there usually by 5:45 at the latest.
Woo.
So I got an hour and 15 minutes, but I get there. The other shift is usually those guys are usually still in bed when I get there.
Sure.
But I'll get the coffee going for those guys and my guys coming in, and I'll let the day come to me on my terms.
Yeah.
Instead of me rushing into the day and just tackling whatever's like thrown at me.
Heck yeah.
So it gives me time. I'll sit there in quiet in the morning and get my meditation in. But I think just doing little things like that help out tremendously. And then as those guys that are getting ready to go off duty start coming into the watch office, I just ask them, I show that I'm vested in them. Honestly, I don't just show it, but I exude it, that I truly am interested in them. I ask them how their shift was. I ask them how their personal, hey, what do you got going on today on your day off or on your break or whatever, and ask them how their family's doing. And that's a common occurrence that I do that because I truly care about each and every one of them, and they know that. And I think that goes back to what I said with the fire chief, having your fingers on the pulse of members of your department. And I try and follow his example and lead in my own way from that. And I think that's all important. They see that, and it's all about planting the seeds and how, like I'm sharing, you asked me to share the different things that help with me, and I think are good tools for everybody. I share that with the guys. I don't push anything down anybody's throat.
Sure.
I think all of this, from doing podcasts, speaking at conferences, going to individual departments, whatever, it's planting seeds.
Absolutely.
Not every seed is going to grow and blossom, but there's going to be quite a few that end up taking root. Mm-hmm. And somebody down the road, when this podcast comes out and people listen to it, they might not think a whole lot about it right in the moment, other than, damn, those were two pretty cool dudes. But down the road, they might have something that comes up in their life. Mm-hmm. And they might like, hey, I remember Chris and Chris were talking about this on the podcast, and I'm going to try that. So that's what this is all about for me, and should be for everybody out there, is just doing this, lead by example, do the right thing, and plant these seeds.
I couldn't agree more. And I think you said it best when you said self-care isn't selfish. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, because we've identified with this ability as first responders to really just solve other people's problems. And, reestablishing or recalibrating our relationship with taking care of ourselves is really, really important. And I think you expressed that very well, so I appreciate that. And I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to prioritize our own wellness so that we can do our job to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like to talk about or say as well is, you just said that we're so good at prioritizing and dealing with other people's stuff. It's like, we're experts at that. That's what we do.
Are.
And if somebody is having a problem, a rough time or whatever, we go to them, strangers that we have no vested interest in other than our oath to serve the community. So that is a vested interest. But we don't know them from Adam. We go there, we hear all of their stuff is put on us. We figure out the problem, we fix it. Why can't we do the same? We're experts at dealing with people's stuff. Why can't we let our brothers and sisters help us deal with our stuff?
Right.
Our events, our problems, our issues. We need to swallow our pride and, like I said earlier, normalize it. After all, we are experts at dealing with stuff like that. So let's help each other and deal with our own stuff within our community.
Absolutely.
We need to look at it like that, and just so many people aren't. But when I hope that when it's put in that context, we're like, holy shit, that makes sense doing that.
Absolutely. We should be, as firemen, as professional, trained firemen, we have this skill set on the truck, that realm, that fire service, EMS realm, we are pros there, and we get all the training, we have all the support and all the tools. And one thing I think, like you're saying, that as professional firemen, we should be so good at knowing what fitness is, right? You should know how to take care of yourself physically. You should know mental and emotional just the same, right? And on this podcast, I really harp on it a lot, but the idea of emotional intelligence, I think that's something that firemen need, so we can help ourselves interact with the community better, but also it's going to increase that connection between me and you. Like, I'm going to understand when you're not doing well, I'm going to understand when I'm not doing well. And another tool, so emotional intelligence and active listening. I think active listening goes a long way, and it's not a tool that we're given. It's not even a concept that if you don't start looking into these things on your own, that you would even know that is a thing. And it sounds like your chief and you both have chosen to go down the path of the emotionally intelligent fire officer route, and you've acquired skills like active listening, and I think that's huge. And as firemen, we should know when to reach out for help. Like, we should be trained, hey, this is when I need to reach out. Here's who I reach out to. What do you say about active listening and emotional intelligence?
Hey, nail on the head right there, Chris. You hit a home run with that. That is it's a lost art, and it's a untaught art these days, and we need to start bringing it back. So many people, we are. Yeah. So many people, they listen to form a response. Mm-hmm. They don't listen to fully understand and comprehend and to validate what the other person is saying. And
you just said something huge there. I don't want to interrupt you, but you said validate, and that is huge. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Hey, interrupt anytime, man. Casual conversation right here.
Right.
But no, once we let somebody know, not just know, but feel that they are being heard, that, in my eyes and in a lot of people's eyes, therapists and doctors that I have spoken to, and actually just first responders that have gone through it and made to feel this way, when they start to feel that they're being heard and their feelings are valid, that is one of the first steps to recovery, to getting that help. They still have a lot of steps to go.
Sure.
But that is a very big step in opening up that process and beginning it. We have to let everybody feel heard and validated, and we can't bullshit that stuff. I know first responders, we're all good bullshitters.
Sure.
But we need to be open and honest. And one way to get them to be open and honest to us and to let them be heard is the whole thing with truthfulness and confidentiality.
Yes.
Because if somebody comes to me to talk about something they're struggling with, and we go with the old firefighter adage, like I said, it's same circus, different monkeys, is the thing with fire departments all across the country. You could just take the name of the city away from fire department and just insert your city here, and we all have the same stories and everything.
Same thing.
What I'm getting at is you have telephone, telegraph, telefirefighter, and we are the worst gossipers.
Oh, God.
So in order to help our members with the behavioral health or CISM or whatever it is, or just as a friend, a confidant that they come to, you cannot betray that trust. You cannot go to the next person and be like, oh, you can't believe what Captain Moore just came to me and said that he was hurting because he ran this call.
Right.
So because regardless of if you made them feel heard or validated, when they talk to you, if they find out that you went and you spoke to somebody else about it, you are shut down. No matter how good you were doing in that moment, you ruined it. And we just need to realize that as well. But
yeah, that's a real again, that's going to be like an emotional intelligence thing. It's going to be a trust thing. It's something that you have to build, and it takes a long time to build, but it doesn't take very much to undermine and lose. And
yeah.
As you're a peer support guy, so you know all about how hard it is to get somebody to open up to you, and if you betray that, now you've just taken a ton of steps back.
Yeah, and with the peer support and talking to somebody and just making it more casual instead of formal, is we talked earlier about the two hardest words to say.
Right.
But do you know, and I'm sure you do, the biggest lie out there for not just first responders, but anybody, is when you ask somebody how they're doing.
Oh, sure,
and that's two more words. I'm fine is usually the response that you always get. So one thing I encourage people to do that truly have that servant's heart and are vested in a brother or sister is when you see somebody and you ask them how they're doing and you get that response or something similar to that, take just a couple more seconds. Just take a deep breath and then ask them again, say, no, how are you really doing? Are you really fine? And I think that's one of the things, too, that helps to begin that dialogue, because then they start seeing, they're like, oh, shit, he really is vested. It's not just like one of those in passing, like, hey, good morning, how you doing today, or whatever. It's like, oh, damn, Captain Moore really wants to know how I'm doing. And I think when we teach people that it's a game changer, just doing little things like that you're really caring for that member's wellness. You're vested in them. You want to know about them. You want to know about their family and everything like that, because we know that we are experts at wearing masks.
Absolutely.
We conceal, or at least we think we do. We conceal things very well, but our significant others have a way they know when stuff's wrong or bothering us or whatever. They might not know what it is or where it stems from, but we're really good at wearing those masks and concealing our feelings, especially amongst our peers. So sure. Ask that second time how they're really doing.
Are you familiar with Ted Lasso? It's a show on the TV.
I've heard some stuff people talk about it. I've never seen it.
So it's a great show, super wholesome. It's kind of adult oriented with swearing and such. But in that show, Ted and his boss, they have an agreement that whenever they ask each other that, how are you doing? What's going on? Is everything okay? And they give you that standard answer, I'm fine, I'm whatever. They have a safe word or a keyword it's Oklahoma. And if I say Oklahoma, that means I'm on to you. Tell me the truth. And then you have to take a minute and just tell me. And I think that's something we could steal from the show. And, it works. I did it to my wife earlier today. She's like, I'm fine. I'm like, Oklahoma. And she said, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I was just testing. It was a test run. But it's something like that I think could go a long way.
I love it, man. Little nuggets like that. That's great. Thank you for sharing that to me and everybody out there.
It's definitely from a TV show, Ted Lasso. I highly recommend you watch it. It'll make you smile, probably make you laugh, and will definitely make you cry a little. But speaking of that check-in, what are some warning signs that someone may be struggling? Like, what can we see if we're not picking up on it initially, if it's subtle?
The beginning of that, like I said, what happened with me is one of the first things I start looking for in other people is that disassociation. And mine started out what I thought was very minor, just pulling away from doing certain things. And then I started pulling away from my family and just not wanting to do a whole lot of family events.
Gotcha.
I started questioning in the beginning my career and everything. So one of the worst questions I think you can ask a first responder is, and I absolutely hate it, and I try and educate people when they ask it, but you're a firefighter. What's the worst thing you've ever seen?
Right.
It's like, if you're asking me the worst thing I ever seen, something so horrific, why would I want to re-experience it, relive it, and share it with you? But they don't mean anything bad by it. They just don't know. They don't understand.
Right. They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly. So I try and educate them on that. But back to the question, just that was one of the things that I would start disassociating, because people would ask what I considered at the time to be dumb questions. And I didn't understand the whole they don't know what they don't know concept at that time. So I didn't want to be out with people going to family functions or work functions with my family or whatever, because when people find out you're a first responder, they think it's cool as shit and they want to ask you all about it. So I would not go to that. I just wanted to be alone. So disassociation is probably one of the very first things that usually begins. Then we start hearing the first responder will start doing a lot of negative talking.
Sure.
Just kind of talking bad about themselves, actually. It's like, I did this wrong again, or I can't believe I messed up. And That could be
an idiot.
Yeah, that could be normal, but to me, if you know that person, back again about fingers on the pulse of your people.
Right.
If that's abnormal for that person, you need to check. Do that. I'm going to do what you said, the Oklahoma. Negative talkings, negative feelings, calling out sick to work. Is another big thing. I know we all get sick, but if you start seeing a pattern develop there with it, then take notice of it. If you have somebody like how I was always active in doing things outside of my normal 24-hour shifts, I was active in different groups and aspects in our department, and I started not showing up to those and just backing away. Another big red flag there.
Okay.
If they start getting more reckless and doing things that's just not safe, doesn't fit in safety in general, or especially SOPs and policies, and they just want to do this or do that, and just so many little things. Social media is a big thing now. I know so many are connected on social media. If you start seeing negative posts on there, like I said, just anything that's not out of the norm, and that's where it comes to be important. Like I said, I can't stress this enough. Your fingers on the pulse of these guys and girls, because if you don't have that, you don't know what's abnormal for them. And you don't really know 100% or as much of what to look out for. But if you have your fingers and you're vested in that person, it doesn't have to be your particular crew. It could be the other. We have 3 shifts within my department.
Us too.
So I mean, we're all in conjunction with each other. I mean, I know everybody does pranks on the other shift or shift wars or whatever it may be, but deep down in the end of the day, I love and I care for those guys, and I keep track of them, and it makes a difference where I can kind of see when somebody's struggling. And I recently just picked up on some stuff the other morning with the crew that was going off, and come to find out they had a really rough call that shift.
Okay.
So I let them talk about it. I knew something was going on. I just asked them, and then they started coming at me or not at me, but talking to me about it. And then I just sat there, did that active listening, let them just get everything out. And whatever it was, a couple of them, when they were talking, they just wanted to tell me all about the call. And then I had a couple that wanted to tell me what they were feeling because of the call.
Gotcha.
And I just told them, I was like we said earlier with me, I was like, hey, you guys have my number. You call me, you want to just shoot the breeze for a little while, you want to express your feelings or emotions if you realize you're going to start struggling. And they're like, no, I'm doing okay right now. And it's right now is fine and well. We know, where we're learning now more and more, that it's not always right after the call. Right. It's when you get off shift sometimes, or even way down the road. But when you're alone, when you're around all your brothers and sisters, everything's usually cool. But when you get home and you're alone, your family's at work, and you're just sitting there in that room, that's when that mind can start playing tricks on you.
Yeah, that isolation time. Yeah, there's definitely a latency between the event and the symptoms sometimes. And, maybe the event was so powerful that the symptoms start showing up immediately, right? You're anxious, your heart's racing, you want to vomit, whatever. And those could be fight or flight things. But I think there's definitely something to be paying attention to, that latency period where you think everything's good, and then all of a sudden, one day it's just not. So definitely keep your eyes on that, guys. It doesn't always show up right away. But one thing you mentioned was, oh geez, I just lost my train of thought. So the latency between the event and the issue is quite a challenge. But coming into the fire service with a little extra baggage, and you brought it up earlier, and I don't say baggage with disrespect, but I mean emotional load that we haven't dealt with. And sometimes we don't even know we have it until our bucket from work overflows. And I think my experience was I had 10 years in the fire service. I accumulated enough stuff for my bucket to overflow, and I was like, wow, that something happened. But come to find out, my bucket was more than 3/4 full before I joined the fire service. And would you mind explaining or introducing the idea of adverse childhood experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something new that we, I know it's fairly new itself, this score and this process for this test. But for us learning about it in the fire service and the correlation behind it is actually just now starting to grow a full speed ahead, that, hey, there's something to this for first responders and the military.
Agreed.
But what it is, it's Adverse Childhood Experiences Score. And it's a test, 10-question test. And don't get scared when you hear the word test.
Right.
It's just yes or no, you answer to these 10 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't try and validate your feelings or make excuses why something is yes or no.
Right.
It's like either this happened or it did not. You don't say, well, it happened to me because I did this and I deserved it, or whatever it may be.
Don't justify it.
Yeah, do not justify it. Be open, honest, and candid. When you go, you can actually Google it, and you can take the test yourself online. Therapists, a lot of them that are familiar with this, you go to their office and you take it. So it's all done in confidentiality, so nobody else will know. But these 10 questions have to deal with your first 18 years of life, about your childhood.
Yes.
And they're always the same 10 questions. I don't have them up right now. But off the top of my head, they're very similar to were you abused as a child? Were you physically abused as a child? Was a adult in your household imprisoned while you were a child? Were you sexually assaulted as a child? And so on. 10 questions, all similar to that. Drugs and alcohol, were they prevalent in your household? And the higher your score is, and it's wrong, I've heard people use the terminology or the comment that the higher your score is, the more messed up you are.
Right.
And I don't like saying that we're messed up.
Yeah, we're not broken.
We're not broken. And the new thing I'm seeing now on social media, I think it's really great. A lot of people are saying, and there's clothing out there with it now, that even broken crowns color. So I mean, even if we are broken, we're still human beings. We're still good, and we're good at stuff, and we can be fixed. We still work, and we can be fixed. So, but the higher your score is, the more stuff that's happened to you. A lot of us don't even realize that we had any of these issues happen to us, because when we're young, we suppress it. The feelings, kind of like what many of us are still doing when we run these traumatic calls or bad events in the first responder world. We suppress all that stuff. Well, as children, we definitely didn't know any better, and we would just push things down. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us may have, I know myself included, when I was introduced to ACEs a year and a half ago, I was like, I don't have any of this stuff. And then I sat there openly and honestly, and I took the test. Well, my number is actually a 5. And to put that in perspective, because those of you that don't know, I'm right in the middle there.
Sure.
But the average prison population, from what I've been able to see through studies, is a 6. So all the bad guys that are there in prison, their score's a 6. So I'm kind of right there borderline with some of these bad people that are in our correction system. Through this, once I was introduced to it a year and a half ago, I have started doing my own personal research and reaching out, because I haven't been able to find anything formal just yet as to how it correlates with first responders and even our veterans.
Sure.
But what I have been able to gather is that first responders, our average is between like a 5 or a 6.
Okay.
And our numbers are so high, the correlation is showing that the thought process is there, is that when we were children going through these adverse experiences, there was nobody there, we felt at the time, whether you were sexually abused, physically abused, or whatever, there was nobody there to help us. So we want to become the rescuer when we're old enough. And that's why we go into either the military or the first responder community or emergency room nurses or whatever it may be. Right. We want to help others because there is nobody there to help us. And we just don't realize that correlation because, like I said, we suppressed it so much. Yeah. But it still stayed on our mind subliminally. And then when we become the adults, that's why we get into these fields. Yeah. And so I would really, I know there's been some small samplings of first responders that have had it done to come up with that 5 to 6 number.
Sure.
But I would like to see a very large scale study of both volunteer, career, rural, and urban departments all across the country to just try and capture some numbers and see where we are at. So it's definitely something I've bought into and I believe in now. So there's a lot going on in my life too, and I totally understand what you're saying. There's these events, and we do repress and we disassociate from things that happened to us as a child, and there's books out there that state that anywhere between that 4, 5, 6 time frame that we actually don't even have memories of that. We have amnesia. Assuming everything went well, we don't remember it, but if it went bad, our body and our mind remember it, but we've lost that memory just due to the brain's functioning. So I think these adverse childhood experiences, they can add up. And I took the test too, and I got a 5 as well, which I was kind of surprised about. Without justifying anything, without blaming or making it about anything else, I was able to, not able, but I ended up scoring a 5 as well. So I'll put a link to the ACE test in the show notes for you guys. If anybody's interested in looking into that, please check it out. And I don't know if there's any studies going around right now, but if that's something you and I could start looking into, or anybody, if they know anything, please let us know. But we could start making that happen. I think that's easy, probably easier said than done, but we could work definitely into that. And just touching on that, just one more moment is that's what that is generational trauma.
Yes.
And because it didn't just start if the issue with, I'll just say myself in general,
sure,
if it was related to my father, then more than likely he got it from his father. He had issues, and he's probably a 5 or 6 or 7 or something also. It's passed down. It's shown that generational trauma is passed on. And us right now, our generation, as we're learning about this, we could be the stop to
we could.
It.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that my father was a bad person. Right. He just, like what we said earlier, he didn't know what he didn't know.
Yep.
It was just what happened to him was just being passed on to me and so on. But now the difference is I know.
You're awake.
So my family's generational trauma stops here with me.
Absolutely.
And I don't do a lot of the stuff that prior to recently learning about all this, I don't treat my son that way. Not that I ever really treated him in a bad way, but now that I know and I can teach my son, and one of the things with teaching our sons and our children is we as a culture don't really treat our children effectively, and this might come across weird, or
I think I track what you're saying.
Egotistical, but for the boys, we don't teach them necessarily all the way how to become men.
Right.
and we don't celebrate it. We don't give them the tools like we're talking about with our mental health and everything. Yeah. We get them from point A to point B, but we once there, we don't elevate them as much as we should, as some cultures do.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a term out there now. It's actually a clinical term, adult children.
Yes.
And that's what we're a lot of people, a lot of the youth out there now are, and young adults are adult children.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the differences that I've learned, and like I said, these are all my viewpoints.
Sure. No, I get it.
Everything. But is the difference between, or what truly makes a man a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of other things, but what I found, what truly makes a man is a man will do things that he doesn't always want to do. And you can take that for whatever, however you want to understand it or relate to it. And I'm not just talking about I don't want to do this, but I'm going to make myself do it. I don't want to. I don't know. It's kind of hard to really fully elaborate on it, but that's my belief system and what I feel now. A great person that I attribute to saving my life. We haven't talked about this part yet.
Yeah.
But is a gentleman who founded a nonprofit organization for veterans and first responders to stop suicide for veterans and first responders. His name is Jake Clark.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that he had told me before. He said a man does something or does things that he doesn't always want to do. We might not always want to talk about our feelings, or we're so much more comfortable. I'm more comfortable just sitting here in the dark and suppressing all this or doing that. Well, damn it, get up and do something you don't want to do. Be a man about this. And it's not tough love. He wasn't saying it like that, like an asshole or anything.
Right.
But I was like, damn, that makes sense. Let me do things I don't always want to do because it's the right thing.
Right.
And we still make time for ourselves. I'm not discrediting that. But for instance, there's things that I used to put off and not do because I just didn't want awkwardness or whatever, and sure. I would suffer in silence and hurt, whether it was an argument with my spouse or whatever, and I just didn't want to be confrontational with that. I would just hold it all inside and just be pissed off for shit. This is embarrassing, but sometimes a week, maybe 2 weeks would go without talking or whatever, and because I was just suppressing it and I didn't want to deal with it or address it. Well, now with my new thought process, it's like, I got to do it. I'm not going to let myself, my blood pressure, my mental health and wellness, everything just be crap for a week or 2 weeks or even a day now.
Right.
And with that, it's normal for me if there's a misunderstanding, which now there's no arguments in my life. I don't let things that don't serve me interfere with my life.
Good.
If there's something in my life that does not serve me, I don't need it.
Right.
And I'm not afraid to say that or anything anymore. It doesn't make me a selfish bastard or anything like that.
Not at all.
And I'm not saying it in an arrogant way, and it's not a threat to people in my life or loved ones or friends or whatever, but if certain things, material things or relationships, I want nothing but goodness in my life, and if I can't have that or whatever, I just don't need it. And it's easier to discuss it, to try and fix it now. And if that's not the case, it's like, okay, hey, nothing against you, but I'll walk away if I make amends with people that I've had problems with. And when I do things like that, it's not a matter if I'm coming to you to make amends with you. It's not a matter of if you necessarily accept it. That's
right.
up to you, what you choose to do. If you choose to be upset and hurt by something still and hold on to it, that's on you. It's
Right.
I've learned through Jake and the program, it's all about cleaning up my side of the street and wholeheartedly making an amends, making a moral inventory of everything that I've done wrong throughout my life, and then, which wasn't a very long list, but then making amends with all that. And that's one thing that I have accomplished, was doing all that. And there is nothing on the table for me when it comes to stuff like that. If things pop up that irk me or irritate me, like I said, I talk about it, discuss it, and move on, because we pick and choose with ourselves, which in turn affects our mental health. Mm-hmm. But it's not in our natural instinct. I think we have trained our mind to where we think it is, to just instantly become mad at something or to have a bad day. We choose that. We might not know it, but subconsciously, if something bad happens, I can pick and choose. I could choose to let it ruin my day.
Yeah.
Or I can say, you know what, this happened, but I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to move on. I'm not going to let it ruin my day. And
Absolutely.
that's the mindset that I have now. So,
yeah, and that's a choice, right? Like that comes down to making an active choice in the moment or in that time frame, whether or not this is going to ruin my day or not. And
yeah,
I think you've pointed it out a couple times, and I lost my track earlier, but if you think of all of this stuff we accumulate as a house fire, right? The pressure builds and it builds. And what do we do as a fire department to let that smoke lift? Obviously, we can put out the fire so we can get away from the event, right? If someone's pissing you off, or, time, distance shielding, get away from that. But also we ventilate the house or the structure. And that's what having these conversations is, I've come to learn. Verbal ventilation and talking about it and getting it out of here and out there. Write it down, host a podcast, talk to your wife, talk to your phone, talk to your dog, but just getting it out and saying it really does make a difference. And I've experienced that so I just wanted to say, if you have something on your mind, talk about it to someone or something and just get it out, get the poison out. It really helps.
Yeah, and another thing you said beside talking, you said writing in there. Write it down.
Yeah, write it down.
That's another thing I tell people, a tool to put in there is
Journal.
Think about the power of pen to paper. Mm-hmm. Think about the stuff that's done over history.
Yeah.
The Constitution and Declaration of Independence was pen to paper. The Bible being documented and everything, all the stories. Yeah. And we could just go on and on with that. And I'm not telling people that you have to write the Constitution or anything as powerful as those things, but write your feelings down. Do a personal journal, artwork. If just doodle something, whatever. But that it is so powerful, and you'll be surprised when you just start writing how things that they'll just come to you from your mind and just start getting jotted down, and before you know it, you'll have several pages done, and you didn't even realize you had that much pin up inside of you.
Yeah, there's something about using your hand to take a pencil and write on paper. There's something cathartic there. So journaling is a very good what we would call tool or resource to put another hole in that bucket that you talked about and get some of that pressure out of that bucket. Yeah. So I would like to move into probably a little bit more sensitive topic, with this month being Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. I would like to start to slowly step into your experience with that and see if we can shed some light on it and maybe influence, motivate, inspire someone to reach out for help, or maybe take a step back from where they are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's obviously, like you said, sensitive, but one thing I pride myself on with all of this, and I think a true way to use this to help other people, is to be that open book and candid and honest. So anything you want to, when I start sharing this part of it, interject with just please jump right in. No questions are off limits. I'm an open book because I know that's how we're going to help people. But I was talking how I finally found that other therapist.
Yeah.
And was getting a lot of really good help. And a lot of my issues were resolved. We were in therapy. When I did have new traumatic events, I was constantly going to therapy, and we were doing the EMDR. We got to a point where we started backing off of the therapy. And eventually it got to the point where she's like, hey, why don't we just go on a as-needed basis? And I agreed to do that. I was good. Well, we all know how stubborn we are, and once we get out of a rhythm and a groove, it's hard to get back into it. When we went to as needed, I would still occasionally reach out, but it wasn't the frequency that I should have been.
Sure.
And then it just stopped altogether. Well, in March of 2021, I had a even tougher call for so many of us out there, like myself. The toughest calls for me, I mean, we have a lot of tough calls, and we experience death and trauma and everything all differently, and it all sucks. I mean, Nobody wants to see anybody die or whatever, regardless of the age. But for many of us, it's pediatrics, and this one was another pediatric event, and it really stuck with me. March of 21, I did at that moment. Later that evening at the firehouse, I actually had my therapist's personal number, so I sent her a text. I was like, hey, I just had this happen. Can I get in and see you tomorrow? It wasn't tomorrow or the next day, but she got me in soon. And we started working on processing that call and going in on a more regular basis and just dealing with issues. And then we got back to the point where, all right, back to as needed. Well, I didn't need it for quite some time. And a year rolls around. We're February, almost in March of 2022 now. And I've been going around speaking at conferences still and sharing all of my stuff. And I share the story up until that point when it happened in March of 21 and how it was and getting therapy. And I had just finished sharing it, and as we were getting closer to the anniversary of that event, and it's weird subconsciously how anniversaries stick with it. I could never remember my own wedding anniversary, but I can remember anniversaries of traumatic events and calls that I've been on.
Residue.
And and this was starting to come up, and it wasn't just like, oh, yeah, I remember this call came up. It was all those flashbacks and hauntings. Yeah. And I think that's the first time today that I used the word haunting. But it was becoming more overwhelming than any of the other stuff I had done had come up before since 2017 when I first realized there was an issue in 2018 and so on. This was by far the worst.
How did it start to show up in your body, if you don't mind me asking?
The shoulders up, the tension, my whole body just constantly, 24/7 was just always tight, tense, headaches. I would have from time to time, this wasn't constant, obviously, but like the panic attacks where you feel the pressure in your chest. I would start hyperventilating, diaphoretic, just sweating profusely. My anger and moods started coming up. I was my hypervigilance that we all always have and always will have, just through the roof. the sleeping and everything was disturbed. I started going back to my vices, my alcohol, my infidelity, spending money. And I had fallen out of that pattern, like I said, because by now it had been, I think, probably 4 months since I had last seen my therapist.
Okay.
I didn't even think about calling her. That was, once again, I reverted back to where that was the hardest phone call to ever make. I'm not going to do this. I was just putting things off. I was hurting. It was like you. I know I talked about the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Yeah.
But it was just. It's so hard to explain. Almost like my mind felt possessed. I was in such a dark place. Sure. That event was just possessing me over and over like a reel. At this point, things I would see on television would affect me.
Wow.
The radio, there was a couple songs that would come on, and I would relate that song to the call. One of the things I didn't share about that call was this little boy, the exact same first name and last name of a child of one of my good friends. So it was the same name. And,
right.
So I think that, we always get an attachment when we have a pediatric call, and especially when we have children of our own. But just the fact of the exact same name as one of my friend's kids made it even more of an attachment. So I got to the point where I really hit rock bottom in that darkest pit.
Sure.
And I was done. I wanted it to stop. And on March 15th, I was at the firehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my infidelities, and I didn't have a whole lot, but one of them got found out about. And my wife, over the telephone, confronted me at the fire station. And that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I had already had a plan and was going to end my life. And I really, truly wanted to end my life. I wanted to die. And when I say it like that, I'm not saying it because I'm proud. I'm saying it because I'm stressing. A lot of people, I've seen reports and studies and heard from therapists. A lot of people are trying to commit suicide I hate that word, commit. It's not commit suicide, complete suicide.
Yes. Yep.
Because we're not committing a crime or anything like that. It's not something somebody necessarily in their right mind chooses.
Right.
And that's the thing, I wasn't in my right mind. But I had already had it drawn up in my mind. I knew what I was going to do. I wanted to complete suicide. I wanted to end my life. I wanted to stop it. Just stop everything. I thought that the pain and the suffering and everything was just going to stop. And so I got that phone call from my wife on March 15th at the firehouse, and she confronted me about the one-night stand that she had found out about, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I randomly, the rest of that shift, started sending out just text messages to important people in my life, and nothing that would really give it away what was going on. Just like, hey, thanks for being there for me. I love you, or whatever. And then I wrote that night in my bunk, I wrote a long letter to my wife, my son, and my mother.
Wow.
And with the intention, I wasn't going to do it at the firehouse. It did cross my mind to do that, but I didn't. I didn't want to do anything violent. I was going to do it at home, and I didn't want my son coming home from school and finding a violent scene.
Yeah, yeah.
So I knew when I got home I had a bottle, I think it was like 50 Xanax. I was just going to take that whole bottle and then just rinse it down with a fifth of bourbon, just go to sleep and not wake up. So usually at shift change at the firehouse, sit around and kind of BS with the guys a little bit, have some coffee with my crew that's going off and the crew coming on, and just share some stories and turnover and all that. Well, my relief came in that morning. It was 6:20, and once relief is there, we can go ahead and book it if we want, but usually I never chose to leave right then. Well, that morning I said very little words, just only what was needed for my pass down, and then I just walked right past everybody, and I'm sure I just had a zombie look on my face.
Sure.
I walked right past everybody, didn't say anything, went to my vehicle, was driving home. I stopped about a half mile before my house, and I looked at my Ring doorbell camera to see if my wife and son were still there, and they were. So I sat there until I saw them leave and knew nobody was home, and then I proceeded home and got my Xanax, took the whole bottle of it, rinsed down with a fifth of bourbon and some beer, and I sent the message to my wife, and I think I had texted one more of my firefighters, and he picked up that something was wrong because him and I have had some conversations about things. And next thing I know, I vaguely remember one of my battalion chief lives in my neighborhood where I lived at the time. I remember him showing up and my neighbor showing up. And then I think I remember a little bit of rescue showing up. And next thing I know, I'm waking up in the hospital with stuff attached to me. And right there by my side was my wife at the time, my son, and my mother. And that's when I truly realized that the suicide, it wasn't stopping the pain. It was stopping my life, but it was just passing that pain on to them, because that's, I saw it on their faces, how hurt and sad and upsetting everything was for them, and everything just sunk in, and I just knew, regardless if I pulled through this, which I knew I figured I was, because I was like, oh shit, I'm awake, I'm here, I'm on Earth still, but that I would never do it again. And once I got myself better, that I was going to share all of this with everybody out there, like I shared the rest of the beginning of my story. This is another chapter when I'm ready, once I'm better. I had to get myself better first, and start sharing this. And I did learn throughout getting myself better to where I am now, that we our mental health system in general, for the general population, needs to evolve a lot.
It does.
And I can see why a lot of people don't want to go to inpatient places, facilities. I know there's some that are awesome. Like hospital institutions aren't necessarily the greatest.
Sure.
So we can really improve that, but that's a different subject right there. But for our first responder organizations, I've come to find out that a lot of us, actually, I haven't found a single department across the country yet that has a plan in place for a member with a suicide attempt and how to do reintegration of them back into the job.
Oh, wow.
For the fire service, that's the only one that I can really speak of. I'm not familiar with the law enforcement there.
Right.
Whatever they have that's similar to our NFPA with our standards and guidelines, which those aren't law for departments. They are recommendations, and departments pick and choose which ones to follow.
Yes, they do.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Texas follows everything to a T. I think it might be law in Texas or pretty damn close to it. But regardless, there is NFPA 1582 for the health and wellness aspect of it, and it does say in there to firefighters with suicide attempts to leave them out for a year.
Okay.
And that's what was decided for me. And let's go back, or let me throw in there the whole, what we said before about others.
Yeah.
The department, it falls back on the whole we don't know what we don't know. If departments haven't experienced anything like this, it can be and is very overwhelming. And I in no way, shape, or form fault anybody within my organization. I think everybody has overall done a great thing, but I think we need to look at things as a whole and use this as a learning experience for myself and for others.
Absolutely.
And when you take somebody out of I wasn't taken out of the department for a year. I was taken out of the field. I was put on a 40-hour work week desk job. And it's still, to me, that stole my identity. I know we have a lot of members, listeners to the podcast that I'm sure there's many that are work in training at a desk or administration or whatever it may be, and a 40-hour desk job isn't overwhelming to them. It's what they're used to. It's their norm. My norm has always been shift work and 24-hour shifts and getting on the truck and serving the public and being with my brothers and sisters. And I just felt like that stripped me of my identity.
Yeah.
I know now. I think I know this job. It helps identify us, who we are, but that's because we let it.
Right.
And I was letting the job define me, and that's one thing that made it sting a little more, because it was taking away my definition of who I thought I was at the time.
Absolutely.
But since then, like I said, I've been reaching out to departments and organizations, both fire and law enforcement, and I have yet to find a department that has a policy in place to reintegrate somebody back into the field other than following, like, they got to be out for 1 year.
Right.
I think in certain cases that's probably really good, but I think in other cases it can be very detrimental to the health and wellness of that member. We should not have cookie cutter policies that are one size fits all, because everybody is different. And that's what I'm striving and working for now. I've sent stuff and tried to help other departments, and all we could do is give them the ball and hope that they run with it. I've had some people within organizations reach out to me and asking for that information and want me to come to the table and sit down and act as a consultant, if you will, because I think by sharing the experiences and what I feel, it would help, but also as my department does the same in turn back to me, because I felt shunned, and a lot of people that I knew were friends, I didn't really hear from, it just disappeared.
Right.
But the reasoning for that is because, like we talked about earlier, we haven't, and I don't want to say normalize suicide. Don't ever want to normalize suicide, but
right.
normalizing the talk about mental health.
Yes.
So, and after the fact, they didn't know what to say to me, how to treat me. And one of the things that I've told them and I teach about is, hey, we don't have to talk about my event. Just come over like we've done in the past, or start doing it now for those that hadn't. Let's sit down and watch a baseball game. Football season, put on a football game, or let's just hang out, do something something normal for us, and we don't have to discuss any of it if you're comfortable. And this is one of the things I'm finding is really helping to normalize this talk, is what you and I are doing right now.
Good.
And I've told members in my department and everywhere I go and who I talk to is that this is normal for me. Talk to me. You tell me whatever you're thinking, your thoughts, why you wouldn't want to talk to me or to another member that went through it, and I'll let you know what I'm thinking. Because I think together, when we come together and we share why I'm feeling this way, something you did made me feel this way because something I did made you feel that way.
Right.
I mean, it's back to the validation thing again. It doesn't have to be Captain Moore is pissed at the world because these people did this to him. That's not going to resolve or fix anything. It's about Captain Moore understanding that I did something in a moment where, a long moment where I was out of my norm.
Sure.
And it didn't just affect me.
Right.
It didn't just affect my family dynamic. It affected my department, and it might have very well affected my department members' families too.
Sure.
So I needed to look at it like that, and then I try and get them to look at it from my perspective too. So, like I said, we can bring it together, form a understanding, and use that to come up with policies and everything that dictate how we handle it. We as departments in public safety, we know how to address a suicide completion.
Right.
I pray to God, like many of us wish, that we would never ever have to do a line of duty death or a first responder funeral ever again. I wish we never had to do another first responder funeral, but we know that's inevitable. It's going to happen, and it sucks. But we don't know how to treat somebody that tries to end their life and isn't successful. So we need to get better with that to normalize all of it.
Yeah.
So I'm helping with that by being so open. Since then, like I was saying, I needed to fix myself first. I've got a lot of great help, and I'm living my best life now. I just had somebody ask me Wednesday. They're like, can you ever get back to where you were prior to all this? And my answer to that was, hell yeah. It's like, dude, I'm honestly living my best life right now. Do I have regrets? I did, but like I told you earlier, I made amends.
Yeah.
On my side, I openly and wholeheartedly apologized and discussed things with other people that I felt that I had wronged and didn't treat right. And as long as I did it on my end to them, regardless of whether or not they wanted to accept it, I'm at peace. And I do my daily meditation. I'm back in therapy, and I will never, ever go to an as-needed basis again. And as a matter of fact, what I do for my therapy is every other week.
Okay.
And I told my therapist, I was like, we're going to stay on this schedule just forever. If I don't have anything going on, I sit down and I talk to her. We catch up on life in general, or just it could be whatever's on my mind. We just sit down and we do it. If I have a traumatic event, we'll dive into the EMDR and we'll work on that. Nice. But I'm not going to stop going. So I recommend anybody out there that's either in therapy now or on the fence about getting it or whatever it may be, once you start, don't stop. Because it's so easy to get out of the habit and to fall back into a dark place again. So I'm doing that, doing my meditations. I talk frequently to my family and my friends and all of you guys out there that reach out to me. That helps me just as much too, because I do the random buddy checks to almost 1,600 of you guys, and all those that almost 1,600, there's a good amount of there that send me random text messages and everything too. It's like, hey Captain, we reached out before to me. I want to just shoot you a text, say thank you, see how you're doing, and it's just really great. But probably the main thing that's really taught me a lot of this, and I've mentioned it a few times, Jake Clark and Save a Warrior, is right after my suicide attempt, I have a friend out in California, and he's a retired police officer that has post-traumatic stress, and he's a very big advocate for mental health and wellness in our first responder community and suicide prevention. And him and I, we first met speaking. We were both speaking at a conference in Chicago, and we just really hit it off. We have the same mission, and this was before my suicide attempt, and we just had always kept in touch. Well, right after my suicide attempt, I don't know how, but word spread like wildfire. And just like we talked about the telephone, telegraph, telefirefighter, right? But it spread not just within my organization, but within the public safety, mental health, and wellness world or community that we have with a lot of the speakers and people that have been to conferences and everything. Well, make a long story short, my friend Michael reached out to me. Okay. And we had a really good heart-to-heart conversation. And he had told me about the organization Save a Warrior. Okay. Because he had been through it. And again, it was started out in Malibu, California, and I believe I want to say it was like 2016. Jake Clark started it in the actually out of the back of his car. He knew, he was a badass veteran and served our country, and then he was Secret Service and law enforcement, and just from hearing of a lot of his brother and sisters, veterans, and then first responders taking their lives, he knew something needed to be done. So he started up this organization, and since then it has moved. He has a really big place out in the middle of nowhere. It's in Hillsboro, Ohio, and it's a nonprofit organization for veterans and first responders. Now they have it reduced down to it's a 3.5 day program, inpatient, no meds or anything. It's all, and not being hippie here, it's all holistic kind of stuff. It's
funny you say that, because we've talked about meditation and holistic approach to health, and everybody thinks there's some hippie stuff going on there. It's like, hey guys, the top tier 1 military, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, they use this stuff and it makes them better at their job. I am not ashamed to do yoga, to meditate, to have an holistic approach to my life. Like, we got to get over this whole thing. Like, integrate the stuff that works and get better.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No. I'm glad, man. Feel free. But yeah, that's spot on. So Michael had told me about it. And what you do, you go to their website It's hopefully you can post that up there with
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
SaveAwarrior.org, if I'm not mistaken.
We'll put links for all that stuff in the show notes so everybody has access to all of it.
Yeah, so he told me all about it. I went to the website, and you fill out a little questionnaire on there, and you hit submit, and eventually very soon they reach out to you, and they do it's called a rostering phone call.
Okay.
And it's a conversation like what we're having now, but they'll ask you some things, to find out if you're a good fit or not. And if you meet the qualifications, they think you're a good fit, then they'll say, hey, welcome to Save a Warrior. We're going to get you here when we start up another cohort. And it's for males and females. You don't go at the same time. Your cohort is either all males or all female. And it's usually right around 9 of you that go there. I know shortly after mine, they started doing I think veterans have always been and still are. They take you from all across the country.
Okay.
First responders, obviously with me being Virginia, they were taking first responders from across the country, but I think they had briefly changed it where they were just taking first responders from Ohio. But I think since then they have opened it back up. So don't let that deter you right now. If you're hearing this and you're thinking about it, go ahead and just submit your information and find out.
Excellent.
But they did a rostering call, and they told me that this was a fit for me, and they were going to get me in there. They found a cohort that was coming up, and they're like, can you be here on for these dates? And I was like, absolutely. I wanted it. I knew I needed it.
Nice.
I wanted any help that I could find and I could get. I was just reaching and grabbing for anything because I want it to be better. I want it to fix myself and my family and
That's
everything.
Right.
And they actually got me into it. It didn't cost me anything other than I had to get out there. So they are the closest airport is Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I think they're between 45 minutes and an hour from there. So I flew in the day before. The morning or the next morning, they actually come to the airport, and they pick anybody up that was chosen that flew into that airport, and they take you back. It's called Warrior Village.
Okay.
And it is a giant, beautiful piece of property that was actually donated to them because what they're doing is really, really believed in. They're actually sponsored also and just got a large addition from assisted by the Disabled American Veterans, help them with some stuff. But there is a living quarters for the first responders, as myself and 8 other first responders that were there. And when we first started our therapy, if you will, they brought us in there, and they asked all of us, Jake Clark, who I told you about, and then one of the other instructors for it, his name is Adam Carr. Okay. And Adam was a Green Beret, and he went through the program, and now he helps others by instructing it. But they asked us, they're like, hey, who here is very skeptical or not believing what you're doing here and this and that? And me being, I've always been an open and honest person when it comes to stuff like this. Sure. I raised my hand, and they're like, all right, tell us why. And I was like, I've been in therapy now for 3 to 4 years, and it obviously hasn't fixed me. I just had a suicide attempt, and you guys think you're going to fix me in 72 hours? I was like, I just don't get it or don't see it. And they're like, okay, that's fair. We just ask of you. Their words is to lean in, be open, be honest, and play the game. And I was like, yeah, I want help. I want to be fixed. You got it. That's what I'm going to do. That's why I'm here. Right. I'm not going to get into everything, the whole recipe.
Sure.
But at the end of 72 hours, this is what you get right here. I'm a free man.
Nice.
I'm a happy man. I have inner peace and outer peace to everybody. I love life. I told you earlier, I'm living my best life. And it doesn't just stop. Their program doesn't just stop after 72 hours. Mm-hmm. It's about always doing the work. And it's do the work. Yeah, it's a community. We say that it takes a village to raise a person, or whatever the saying is. And it's the same thing. It's about just in our jobs as first responders, there should always be accountability. Mm-hmm. Well, with our mental health and wellness, it's accountability. That those 8 other brothers that I went through, first responders from all across the country, we have a text group with all of us, and then we have Jake Clark is in our text group, and a couple of the other guys that what it said, or what they call it, is they came back for us. Okay. We were struggling, we were hurting, we were down in the dumps. Right. Jake Clark and those other guys involved with Save a Warrior, they came back for me and those 8 other guys and everybody else in all the other cohorts to save us, because my life mattered to them. So some of those guys are in huge. There, and it's just so personal. There's no arrogance or egos. That's what we talk about. We got to put, and I don't know if you pick up on it, I'm getting it now. My voice and my tone and everything is changing because it's changing because I'm passionate about this. I've been passionate about everything we're saying, but more so about this because it's just so meaningful from where I was and where I am right now. Is these guys, they put their shit aside for me, and they came back for me and made a difference in my life and have brought my life back to a standard so much higher than where it was prior to everything. And I am forever grateful for those guys, and I will always do the work that's required to not just maintain where I'm at right now, but to keep going upward. And it's about reading books and just expanding our mind. And I was touching on just a few minutes ago before I had to explain about my passion, but so many of us, just everybody in life, but damn it, dude, it's gotten really, really bad. I'm finding in public safety is the ego. We have a lot of egotistical people, and when you're egotistical, it's your way or the highway. Whatever you're thinking or feeling you think is right, you can't validate it or whatever. You got to set your ego aside, and you got to do what's right for yourself, and you got to do what's right for others. And you can't let your ego drive you. You got to let that true love and feelings and emotions in, and have that servant's heart that so many of us had when we first came into this profession. We had, and we still have it, that servant's heart, but sometimes it's easy to lose track of it. And those guys restored that in me. That's just one of the things they restored. But dude, if anybody out there is thinking about this and wants more information, you got my telephone number. Reach out to me. Reach out to Save a Warrior. I'm pretty sure on the form when you submit it online, it asks for how did you hear about this, or who did you hear about it from. Definitely put my name down if you want. I mean, I don't get anything out of it. And so, like I said, it doesn't cost you a dime other than showing up there if you get accepted. I just want all of you guys out there and girls to get better and get in a place where I'm headed right now, where I'm at right now, and just keep elevating and be the best you that you can be, because those guys came back for me. And eventually, like I said, Adam Carr, who was our leader for this, he actually had went through the program as a Green Beret, and there's a lot of other big name people that have been through this program that people don't even know about. And what they do is they come back, they bring, I can eventually go back and assist with other first responders, and it's called shepherding. They are shepherds because they guide us and they lead us while we are in there over those 3.5 days. And then even afterwards, your shepherd stays in touch with you. And it's just a giant community. I believe now they're on like their 220th cohort since they started that. So if you figure, I said 9, but we'll just say 10 people. So that's over 2,000 veterans and first responders that they have made a huge impact on. And that's where I first learned about the ACEs score, was that Save a Warrior. So they teach us how to open up and learn about that and understand it and to move on from it.
I really appreciate you telling me your story. That is a very personal story, and I speak for the audience and myself when I say thank you very much from the depths of my heart for sharing that with us. And you're probably inspiring and encouraging people to share their story too. But I do have one question for you. With the concept of this podcast being priority traffic, on the fire ground, when somebody has priority traffic, it is you say, let them know you have something to say, and people listen. And I want to give you the opportunity to share what you would consider to be priority traffic from your experience, considering all we've already discussed, what you may say to this audience and anybody who comes across this content on the World Wide Web, which could be, anywhere from one person to millions. What would your priority traffic be?
So my priority traffic would be so often, or not so often, but we learn in the fire service about Maydays. Mm-hmm. And we do in my department a lot of Mayday training, and I think a lot of departments across the country do it as well. So we need to know, I would do Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We need a mental health Mayday. Pay attention to your members. Pay attention to your bucket and make sure your bucket's not overflowing. Use your Mayday tools. Use a mental health RIT bag, and in your RIT bag for your mental health, it should be a lot of the stuff, if not more than what we touched on today, because we just touched on it. But a lot of those tools that we talked about, sharing with other people, and therapy, and EMDR, and pencil and paper, and so on, put that in your RIT bag. My priority traffic is a mental health Mayday for yourself and your brothers and sisters out there. I know Mayday comes from the military, but we reuse it in the fire service.
Absolutely.
And I know there's so many more listeners out there of your podcast that aren't just firefighters. So Mayday for all of our first responders and listeners out there when it comes to your mental health and wellness and your brother and sister's mental health and wellness. Keep those fingers on the pulse of not just them, but yourself, because self-care is not selfish. So look out for each other. Be safe out there. And I know we're probably going to hit this, but I'm going to throw it out there one more time. No matter how good things might be going right now, or how low, bad, and dark things might seem to you, or you think they might be headed, or they are headed, just know, please, that anybody will listen to you. If you can't find anybody, or you just feel like you'd be more comfortable speaking to me, I will always listen. My priority emergency closure traffic right now is I will always listen. Call me anytime, day or night. I have my phone by my side 24/7. I might not always be able to answer in that moment. If I don't, leave me a voicemail. I promise you all, I will get back with you. If I don't answer it, it's because I'm on a call or whatever it may be. But I will get back at 757-536-3373, and I will always listen. Put that in your RIT mental health tool bag, and let's do this, guys. Let's break this stigma. Let's smash it and normalize this conversation like Chris and I had today.
Well, Chris, I think that was excellent. Priority traffic coming from you, and I think the fact that you share your phone number is very unique, and I really appreciate that. It gives people a direct line to somebody who has expressed interest and will listen and has the training and the experiences to hopefully either guide you or give you something to do immediately in that moment. So, Sir Captain Chris Moore, I couldn't tell you how honored I am to have you on my podcast this morning. It's been an excellent conversation. I hope we get to chat some more soon in the future. We could probably dig into all of these topics even further, one at a time, and produce hours and hours of content. So I look forward to having more conversations with you. Again, thank you so much. And on behalf of myself and the podcast audience, thank you. It's been an excellent conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate you having me on here and having this platform, and it's so important that we get it out. So you're doing amazing things. I'm proud and happy that you asked me to be a part of it. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Well, thank you guys all for listening to Priority Traffic Podcast. This has been Captain Chris Moore with Breaking the Stigma and Promoting Health and Wellness Amongst the Fire Service. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Be safe.
That's all for today's episode of Priority Traffic Podcast, where we discussed PTSD and what we can do to help break the stigma. Remember, it's all about taking care of your physical and mental health, but sometimes it's essential to reach out, ask for help, and understand the warning signs of a mental health crisis. Thank you so much to Captain Chris Moore for sharing his story with us. And please do not forget, reach out if you need to talk. He is always ready to listen. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, for more inspiring content and to stay in the loop about upcoming episodes and interviews. Remember, my friends, you are not alone. We're building a community of high-performing firefighters and humans, united by the pursuit of personal growth and excellence. Let's continue supporting and uplifting one another as we walk this path together. Thank you so much for joining us today, and please don't forget, we're humans by chance and firefighters by choice. Stay well, my friends.